My husband's parents secretly transferred my husband's property deed to his brother. They thought I'd stay silent after being humiliated in front of everyone. But they didn't know the land was registered under my name first. Let the men handle real estate. His brother laughed at me. For years later, they were paying me rent. I married Anton when I was 27. We met at a city arts fundraiser in Temecula. He was there helping his family's construction business sponsor a local mural project. I was designing the event posters as a freelance graphic designer, just trying to build my portfolio. He was quiet, kind, the type who'd help fold chairs at the end of the event without being asked. It wasn't some whirlwind romance. It was steady, thoughtful, secure. I liked that about him. His family, though, that was another story. The Giordano's weren't bad people. Just prideful. Loud. Traditional in a way that always felt like I was being measured with a scale I didn't know existed. His mother, Rosetta, made a big show of welcoming me at first. Always smiling, always perfectly dressed, but quick to throw in little comments like, "You're not much of a cook, are you?" Or, "It's sweet how you still work, Anton will take care of everything eventually." His father, Maurizio, barely said 10 words to me the first year I knew him. He was a stern man with heavy eyebrows and a handshake that felt like he was testing your endurance. He only ever spoke to Anton and his younger son, Luca. Luca. The golden boy. Loud, ambitious, always with a drink in hand and a story about how he'd saved the family business or closed a killer deal. Everything was a competition with him. And I was always invisible to him. Unless he was making some backhanded comment about how the wives should stay out of real estate talk. When Anton and I got married, his parents transferred a few properties into his name. Rentals, mostly. Modest ones, scattered around San Diego County. They said it was to give him a strong start, but every family dinner came with a reminder of how generous they'd been. It never felt like a gift, more like a leash. Still, we built a life. I worked from home, Anton managed the rentals, and we tried to stay away from the drama. For a while, it worked. Then Leona was born. That changed everything. Anton wanted to build us a permanent home. Something stable, something away from the tension of the Giordano's but still close enough to manage the properties. He found a plot of land in Escondido, undeveloped, but promising. His parents had owned it for years but never did anything with it. He said they offered it to us. I was immediately cautious. I had learned by then, nothing from Rosetta and Maurizio came without a string. So I asked Anton, what if we register the land under both our names? He shrugged, said, sure, that makes sense. He wasn't against it, he just didn't think about those things. But I did. I'd lived long enough among people who smiled while undercutting you with paperwork. I went further. With Anton's approval, I had our real estate attorney file the paperwork with me as the primary owner. It was clean. Legal. The property was being transferred from Anton's parents to our family unit, and since we weren't forming an LLC or a trust for it yet, the title could go to either of us. I signed it. Anton signed it. We filed it. Done. No announcement. No drama. And that probably burned them more than anything. A few months later, the dynamic changed. Rosetta began excluding me from calls and texts about family events. I'd get a forwarded message last minute with vague details. Maurizio, never warm to begin with, started actively ignoring me when we visited. And Luca? He ramped it up. That day at the barbecue, when he laughed about handling the land better and told me to let the men deal with the numbers, that was the beginning of their little plot. I didn't flinch. I smiled, cleaned up the dishes, and watched them circle Anton like sharks. Within weeks, Luca had convinced Anton's parents to restructure the property titles for tax purposes. I heard about it one night when Anton came home looking confused. He showed me a letter, a drafted document transferring the Escondido property into Luca's name. Not a proposal. A drafted transfer. Did you sign anything? I asked. He shook his head. No. But they said it's just a formality. I knew then that it wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. They thought I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't push back. The next few weeks were an absolute circus. Rosetta staged a family brunch, and during her toast, she turned to Luca and said, "To the one who saved the family land from poor decision-making." Her eyes flicked to me, then she laughed. Everyone laughed. Even Anton smiled awkwardly, not knowing what was happening. I just stared at her. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't say a word. Because I had already secured the land. In my name. Fully registered. No loopholes. They were playing checkers. I was playing chess. After that brunch, everything in me hardened. Not just toward Rosetta, or Maurizio, or even Luca, but toward the whole illusion I'd been quietly tolerating for years. The fake politeness. The calculated backhandedness. The entitlement they wrapped in tradition and family values. I saw it all clearly that day. I didn't fight them. Not yet. I kept doing what I'd been doing, letting them believe they were winning. Luca began construction on the land a few months later. I heard about it from a friend who worked in city planning and noticed a Giordano construction permit filed for commercial development on the lot. A storage facility with solar panels and premium private units. Interesting. I drove by the site a week later, alone, in the middle of a hot Wednesday afternoon. The chain link fencing was up, and the Giordano trucks were there, unloading steel beams. I parked a block away and walked up like any curious neighbor might. Luca was on site, wearing reflective shades, barking orders. He saw me. Paused for a second. Then smirked. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The way he looked at me, like I was a distant afterthought, like this entire project was already his victory, it told me everything I needed to know. He had no idea. From that point on, I watched from a distance. Luca poured money into that site. Not slowly. Recklessly. They fast-tracked construction, probably assuming they were outpacing any potential legal friction. And I just waited. I met with our real estate attorney twice during those months, making sure our title was ironclad. It was my name, exclusively. No conditions, no co-ownership, no backdoor transfers. Anton had signed it over with full consent, and there were no liens, no family claims, nothing to contest. It was mine. And still, they acted like it was theirs. Anton began asking questions. Quiet ones. He wasn't confrontational by nature. But I could tell he was starting to see the lines on the chessboard too. One night, he sat down next to me on the couch and asked, "Did you ever file the title with just your name?" I looked at him. He wasn't upset. He was just weary. He'd been caught between loyalty to his parents and his loyalty to our marriage for so long that he finally understood he had to choose. "I did," I said. "You signed off on it." "We filed it legally." He nodded slowly. "Good." That was all he said. From then on, he stopped trying to play peacekeeper. Construction on the storage facility finished just under 9 months later. They had the grand opening in early spring, big banners, ribbon-cutting ceremony, the whole bit. Rosetta posted photos on Facebook with captions like, "So proud of our boys, real builders, real legacy." I screenshotted every post. Saved every promotional flyer. Kept every marketing email that came to my inbox through the city registry. Because when the time came, I wanted a perfect, clear picture of just how deep they'd buried themselves. 2 months after the grand opening, they began taking tenants. Renting out units. Luca even bragged about the cash flow during a family dinner, one I was not invited to, but Anton was. He came back that night, poured a drink, and told me everything. He said the place is booked out for the next 6 months, Anton said, sitting at the edge of the bed. Told my dad it's already profitable. I nodded. Good. He looked over at me. You're really gonna do it, huh? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The letter went out 3 weeks later. A formal demand for rent. Addressed to Giordano Construction, CC to both Rosetta and Maurizio, with attachments showing the registered deed, my exclusive ownership, and a rental valuation analysis from a licensed appraiser. Monthly rent, $12,800. Backdated for 2 years of unauthorized use. I sent it through my lawyer. Certified mail. They got it on a Thursday morning. By Friday night, Rosetta was calling Anton nonstop. Maurizio tried leaving a voicemail, his voice cracking in a way I'd never heard before. And Luca? He sent an email. Short. Panicked. This must be some kind of mistake. Call me. I didn't. Instead, I waited. Again. They tried to dispute the ownership, of course. Claimed it was family property, that the land was only registered under my name as a temporary measure, that there was an understanding. Their lawyer sent back a feeble response about verbal agreements and implied consent. It was laughable. They hadn't even done their due diligence. When my lawyer responded with full documentation, every form, every signature, every record of communication, things got very quiet. Then came the real twist. They didn't want to lose the facility. It was too valuable. Luca had poured too much into it, financially and publicly. He'd secured funding based on projected income. If he lost the land, he lost the leverage. So they offered to buy me out. Their offer came through an email from Luca's assistant. Not a lawyer. Not even Luca himself. An assistant. Ms. Valdez, Mr. Giordano is open to discussing a purchase of the property in question. He proposes a fair market rate and would prefer to settle this matter privately without legal escalation. Please advise on next steps. Privately. That word stuck with me. Privately, after they publicly humiliated me in front of their entire family. After they spent years brushing me off, laughing at me, cutting me out of every decision. And now they wanted discretion. Now they wanted quiet. I forwarded the email to my attorney without responding. His reply was quick and clinical. My client is not interested in selling at this time. However, we are open to lease negotiations under new terms, with an adjusted rate reflecting current market trends and retroactive use. The Giordanos had built a revenue stream on land they didn't own. And now, they couldn't walk away from it without hemorrhaging money. I had them. Anton stayed quiet during this whole process. Supportive, but quiet. He'd made his peace with it, his family had crossed a line that, finally, even he couldn't defend. And to his credit, he never once asked me to back down. He knew this wasn't just about land anymore. It was about dignity. What shocked me was how quickly their tone changed. Luca showed up at our house one afternoon. No warning. No call. I was watering the front planters when his black Range Rover pulled up and parked halfway onto our curb. He got out, wearing sunglasses and his usual smugness, though this time it looked thinner, like it didn't quite fit him anymore. "Can we talk?" he said, hands in his pockets, standing a few feet away like I was some client he had to win over. I didn't say no. But I didn't say yes either. He took that as permission and started walking up the steps. "Look," he began, "I know there's been confusion about the land." I raised my eyebrow. "Okay, not confusion, maybe miscommunication," he corrected. I stayed silent. "But this, charging us rent, come on, Mia. You really want to do that to family?" Family. That word again. The one they only pulled out when it suited them. "When Rosetta toasted you for rescuing the land," I said finally, "was that also just a miscommunication?" He looked down. "That wasn't about you." "No," I said, "it never is. Until it is." He started pacing slightly, like he was rehearsing an argument he'd already had with himself. "Look, I made a mistake. I assumed the land was still under Dad's name when I started the project. I didn't check because I didn't think I had to. That's on me. But this? Charging us retroactively? Come on. That's aggressive. So was building a storage facility on someone else's property without checking, I said. But here we are. He stopped pacing. He looked at me, for the first time, really looked at me, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not remorse. Not understanding. Fear. He knew I wasn't bluffing. I'm not selling, I said. And if you don't want to rent, you're free to vacate. You'll force us to tear down the whole site, he asked, voice cracking slightly. You'd really go that far? I looked him dead in the eye. You have 90 days. He left without saying another word. Anton watched him from the living room window the entire time. Later that night, he brought me tea without speaking. Just placed it beside me on the couch and sat down. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew what came next. Over the next month, their lawyer sent 3 revised lease offers. Each one higher than the last. Each one more desperate. They couldn't afford to tear it down. And no bank was going to refinance a property with a contested land dispute. So eventually, they accepted my lease terms, every single one of them. $14,600 a month. Triple net. 5-year minimum term with escalations. They signed it. They backpaid the last year. And the Giordano family officially became my tenants. But that wasn't the satisfying part. The satisfying part was watching Rosetta walk into the county office to submit an application for a business license amendment, and realize she had to list me as the property owner. I was sitting in the waiting area for a different appointment when I saw her. She spotted me, did a double take, and the color drained from her face. She clutched her purse tighter, walked to the counter, and quietly asked for a form. She didn't say hello. She didn't glare. She didn't even nod. Because there was nothing left to say. They had lost. Not in court. Not in some public spectacle. They lost the moment they assumed silence was weakness. They thought I didn't understand their world, the real estate world, the business world. But the truth? They didn't understand mine. And I was just getting started. The rent started coming in like clockwork. Luca set up automatic payments. I'd see the deposit hit every first of the month, a clean, cold reminder that the same people who had once laughed at me now owed me. But the money wasn't the win. The win was how everything that happened next unfolded on its own. The lease triggered a ripple effect they hadn't prepared for. With Luca's cash tied up in the lease and construction debts, he was strapped for liquidity. He started missing payments to subcontractors, one of whom sued. Then came an inspection failure due to a drainage miscalculation on the lot. He tried blaming me for land structure limitations, but legally, that was his problem. By fall, he was underwater on another project and had to sell off a stake in the family business to a third-party investor just to stay afloat. That's when Maurizio snapped. There was a blowout fight, not in private. At another family dinner I wasn't invited to but heard about the next morning from Anton's cousin, who gleefully forwarded me a group text thread. Maurizio called Luca reckless. Luca called Maurizio blinded by pride for trusting me. Rosetta tried to mediate but just ended up crying into her wine when Luca accused her of gifting property to a woman who never belonged in this family. That phrase, never belonged, was the final nail. Because by then, Anton was already preparing his move. What nobody knew was that Maurizio had been quietly rewriting his estate plan. He always assumed Anton would be taken care of through family ties, not formal legalities. But Anton had finally had enough of being strung along and second-guessed. He hired his own lawyer and requested a full audit of his expected inheritance, including any promises made in writing about properties, shares, or cash. What he discovered? Nothing was guaranteed. It was all to be determined. All leverage. He showed me the documents. They were never planning to leave me anything concrete, he said. Just enough to keep me quiet. That's when he got quiet. Focused. He moved our finances entirely out of joint family accounts. Sold his small stake in Giordano Construction. Used the money to co-invest with me in a duplex in Carlsbad that we rented out to 2 traveling nurse families. That investment tripled in value within 18 months. The real break came 6 months later, when Maurizio had a minor health scare, nothing deadly, just enough to send the family spiraling. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the future of the business. And Anton? He declined to show up at the meeting. That silence hit harder than any argument could have. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply walked away from the inheritance game, which, ironically, made the family realize he was the only competent one among them. That's when Rosetta came to our home. Unannounced. Afternoon. I saw her standing at the door through the kitchen window. She was wearing heels too high for her age, holding a manila envelope like it might shield her. I opened the door. She didn't step in. "I need to speak to Anton," she said. "He's not here." She hesitated, then handed me the envelope. "These are revised estate documents. Maurizio wanted him to have something in writing." I took the envelope, didn't open it. "He should read them," she added. "I will," I said. "If he wants to." She didn't argue. She nodded once, turned around, and left. Inside the envelope were 3 things: a notarized statement confirming Anton's full rights to a property in Oceanside previously reserved for Luca, a draft transferring 15% of the family business shares to Anton, and a letter from Maurizio, handwritten, stiff, but oddly human, stating he wished things had gone differently. Anton read it all. Then, without saying a word, he slid the papers back into the envelope and put it in the kitchen drawer. He never signed anything. Not out of spite. But because by then, he didn't need their legacy. He was building one of his own. And me? I kept collecting rent from Luca. For 2 more years. Then, when the lease term ended, I declined to renew. I gave him 60 days' notice. No drama, no lawsuit. Just a clean, professional, written letter. He tried to negotiate. Begged, even. Offered to buy the land outright. I declined. He moved out. The facility sat vacant for a year before someone from a renewable energy co-op reached out and asked about a long-term lease for solar equipment storage. Their offer? More than double Luca's final rate. I accepted. Now the same land Luca mocked me for not understanding was generating revenue from a green initiative supported by the state. My taxes went down. My income went up. The co-op even added signage with my name as the primary property sponsor. That was the final cherry on top. Not revenge in the dramatic, cruel sense, no shouting, no slamming doors. Just quiet, patient correction of every assumption they made about me. They underestimated the woman in the background. The one they excluded from family meetings, ignored at dinners, laughed at during toasts. The one who didn't yell or demand attention. The one who simply knew the paperwork. And knew how to wait. Now? They still avoid me at extended family gatherings. Rosetta barely looks me in the eye. Maurizio stays home most days. And Luca? I think the last time I saw him was when he quietly asked Anton if we'd be open to selling the land someday. Anton didn't even answer. He just smiled. And I just sipped my wine and let the silence speak.